Alderman Kerrigan will take the start of the meeting. Alderman Kerrigan, are you happy to introduce, and I can take it from there?
Yeah, Karen. You're dealing with item number 1, the notice and summons the meeting, if that's all right.
Thank you, Chair. To all members of Environment and Regeneration Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of Environment and Regeneration Committee to be held in the Chamber, Guildhall and socially distanced and hybrid on Wednesday the 13th of April at 4 p.m. And I'll take the roll call. Alderman Morris Devaney.
Here, Karen.
Thank you. Alderman Derek Hussey. Alderman Hussey. Alderman Keith Kerrigan is here. Alderman David Ramsey.
I think Alderman Ramsey will be present later in the meeting, Karen. He's absent at the start.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Boyle.
Afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
Yes, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Edwards.
Here online, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Rachel Ferguson is in the chamber. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Shaw, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Shaw, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Emma McGinley.
And Shaw, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Ray McHugh is on his way. Councillor Maeve O'Neill.
Here.
Thank you. And Councillor Brian Tierney is in the chamber. Alderman Hussey, are you here?
Online, Karen.
Thank you. Chair, if you're happy, I will do the broadcasting statement.
Yeah, thank you, Karen.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone present at the meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at the meeting, you are consenting to be filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. And a copy of the Council's privacy notice may be found on the Council website. Thank you, Chair.
Can any members now, it would be item 4, declaration of members' interest. So if anybody has any interest, if they wish to put them into the chat box at this stage, or if not, they wish to raise it as we go through the items. So if no one has anything they wish to raise straight away, I think we'll move on now, Karen, with item number 5, the deputation from Ørsted regarding the Owen Ray and Craig Abnall wind farms.
Thank you, Chair. And we seem to have Kelly McVeigh, Olivia Roach and Orla Kirk attending on behalf of Ørsted, and I'll pass over to yourselves now to take us through the presentation. Thank you. Chair, for information, Councillor McHugh has now joined the meeting, so
that's all right.
Can take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly McVeigh here. Can I just double check that the PowerPoint is, I know it was distributed, but is it able to be shared on screen?
We'll check that now, Chair. Yeah, we're organising to do that now.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I'll just give a very quick introduction and then pass you on to the team. So my name's Kelly McVeigh and I'm working with both Ørsted and Juno Planning in ensuring all stakeholders are engaged throughout the process of the proposed application that we're going to brief the committee today. Olivia Roach from Ørsted and Orla Kirk from Juno Planning will brief you on the proposed project and timescales. But from my perspective, I just wanted to quickly explain why we were briefing this particular committee. Whilst the decision for the proposed development sits with the Department for Infrastructure, Ørsted is committed to engaging with the local council throughout the process. As part of that, it will also include informal updates provided to relevant planning officials and other relevant stakeholders, following liaison with the Chief Executive.
Kelly, Councillor
Yep.
John Boyle here. I'm going to have to seek some advice from the City Solicitor in relation to this, as I sit on the Planning Committee, in relation to perhaps a conflict of interest if I hear this presentation right now. So perhaps, if you don't mind me interrupting you, and apologies to you, Chair, City Solicitor could advise on that.
Chair, the City Solicitors is on the line. Philip, would you like to advise this application is being dealt with by DFI? Could you give comment on that if possible?
Yeah, Chair, because the application is not being dealt with by the Council's Planning Committee, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever why the member can't stay in the chamber or online and hear the presentation.
That's great, thank you. And Kelly, apologise for interrupting you.
No problem, Councillor. Thank you very much for that. So yes, as referenced, the decision for the project sits with the Department for Infrastructure, but Ørsted is committed to engaging with the local council at all stages of the process to keep relevant stakeholders up to date. Following engagement with the Chief Executive's Office, it was agreed that this committee was the most relevant committee initially for the briefing, but going down the line, we would be more than happy to brief other committees or councillors as a whole whenever the project moves forward. If you want to move on just to the next slide, the agenda just gives a very quick outline as to what you will, the next slide after that, apologies. I keep forgetting that I'm not the one controlling the slides. So the agenda just gives you a quick outline of what the team will discuss today. And as always, we're more than happy to answer any questions. So I'll pass you over to Olivia Roach from Ørsted, who will give you further update on the project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you all for giving us the opportunity to present the project to you this afternoon. Could you move on 2 slides, please? While I'm waiting for that to happen, I'll just briefly go through the agenda. So I'll be giving you a brief introduction to Ørsted, and I'll also discuss the development, and then I'll hand over to Orla Kirk from Geno Planning to go through the pre-application discussions and the community engagement that has happened to date. Can I just confirm that you can hear me?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
We're moving on.
Brilliant, thanks very much. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So Ørsted develops, constructs and operates renewable energy plants, including offshore and onshore wind farms and solar farms. The vision of the company is a world that runs entirely on green energy, and it's been ranked as the world's most sustainable energy company for the past 4 years. It's also recognised as a global leader on climate action. The company is headquartered in Denmark, and it employs over 6,500 people in 14 countries worldwide. In Northern Ireland and Ireland, we have a portfolio of 332 megawatts of onshore wind farms, which we acquired from Brookfield Renewable last year. And that includes Owenray 1 and 2 wind farms and the consented Craignagapple wind farm, which are in this council area. The ambition of Ørsted is to increase this portfolio by more than 600 megawatts in the coming decade. And as part of this ambition, we are developing a repowered and expanded wind farm at Owenray, Craignagapple. Next slide, please. In fact, you can move forward to the next one again, thanks. So just to introduce the development, this is a map showing the site location, and it is located about 6 kilometres from Strabane on the western edge of the Sperrins. Next slide, please. The next map shows the proposed location in relation to nearby settlements, and they include Strabane, Glenmornan and Artigarvan. Next slide, please. So why are we looking at this site? Well, the site has an extensive wind energy history. Owenray 1 has been operating since 1997, and Owenray 2 has been operating since 2008. There were 16 turbines consented and constructed there, and 1 has been since removed, so there are 15 in total. And in 2019, Derry City and Strabane District Council gave us consent for a further 6 turbines at the site. There is excellent and proven wind resource at the site. The nearest non-involved properties are over 1 kilometre away, and we have done detailed ecology and ornithology surveys over the past number of years, so we're very familiar with the importance of the local habitats. And this repowering extension will allow the potential of the site to be maximised. Next slide, please. This map shows the location of the permitted and existing wind turbines. The yellow dots are the Owen Ray 1 turbines, the blue dots show the Owen Ray 2 turbines, and the cyan dots show the 6 permitted Craignagample turbines. Next slide, please. So the proposed development will involve decommissioning the operational Owen Ray 1 and 2 wind farms and repowering with 4 taller turbines, and we're looking at heights of up to 156.5 metres. The reason we're looking at 156.5 metres is because we believe that by the time we come to actually build the wind farm, this will be the smallest commercially available turbines to us, and we're going for the smallest having regard to the area in which we're developing, which is part of the Sperrins AONB. The development will also include the amendment of the consent for Craignagample to increase the number of turbines from 6 to 11 and to increase their tip height from 111 metres up to 156 metres. So the current layout we're proposing will comprise 15 turbines and an installed capacity of up to 72 megawatts. There will also be ancillary infrastructure which is normal for these developments, such as hard standing areas around the turbines themselves, access tracks, cabling, substation, etc. And we're currently in an iterative design process, so the final development details will be subject to change. Next slide, please. But bearing that in mind, the next slide will show a map of the proposed turbine layout. The blue dots show where we're proposing to put the new turbines. So they're surrounding the existing Owen Ray 1 and 2 wind farms. This is going to be subject to change as our surveys are completed and as we gain feedback from statutory consultees and from the local community. Next slide, please. This is the final slide I'll be presenting to you, and I'd just like to highlight some of the benefits of the development for the area. So we have a community benefit fund in place for Owen Ray that since 2017, and it supported a number of different initiatives, including the acquisition and repair of St. Joseph Primary School by Owen Rose GAC in Glenmornan, and recently we've approved funding to install a defibrillator in Evish. There are also annual rates paid to Derry City and Strabane District Council, which amount to about £100,000 per annum at the moment. And additionally, the wind farm generates 26.5 gigawatt hours per year of renewable energy, which is enough to power around 8,250 homes with green indigenous energy. The proposed wind farm is going to allow us to do even more. We have committed to a community benefit fund level of £5,000 per megawatt, and depending on the final installed capacity, this means about £250,000 to £360,000 per annum will be available for local community projects. And from some of the examples I'm given, I think it's clear that the kind of projects we support all fall within the aims of what the Sperrins local growth plan is trying to achieve. The annual rates to Derry City and Strabane District Council will also increase. The level is not yet known, but if we assume a similar amount paid per megawatt to, as the current wind farm, then we'll have payments of about £500,000 to £750,000 per year to the council. It will also generate a lot more energy, up to 286 gigawatt hours per year of renewable energy, which will power up to 90,000 homes with, again, indigenous and green energy. This will be a significant contribution to Northern Ireland's 2030 climate goals and the Northern Ireland Energy Strategy. There will be job creation during construction and via contracts open for competition locally, and we intend to run a Meet the Buyers event in the autumn to allow local businesses and suppliers the opportunity to meet our delivery team and find out how they can bid for contracts. Finally, we'll be implementing a conservation and habitat management plan as part of this development, which will protect and restore local habitats and encourage biodiversity. So thank you for your time. I'll now pass you on to Orla Kirk from Juno Planning.
Thank you, Olivia. If you could skip on a couple of slides, that'd be appreciated from my side. I want to give an overview of the pre-application discussions that have been undertaken with the Department for Infrastructure to date. In May of last year, the Department for Infrastructure confirmed that they would be dealing with the application rather than the local council, as the wind farm will be in excess of 30 megawatts. So it'd be great if you could skip on a couple of slides from the presentation. I'm not sure if there's a bit of a, if it's just frozen there, But in any regard, the next slide, please. Thank you very much. In July 2021, the project team submitted a formal environmental impact scoping request and a pre-application discussion document. And the purpose of these documents were to try and scope out and agree the final content of the planning application submission. The formal EIA scoping and PAD process is ongoing. It has been delayed by an outstanding statutory consultation response from NIEA, and it's fair to say that it's taken longer than anticipated at this stage. Leaving that aside, to date, we've had positive meetings with a number of statutory consultees, including the Council's own Environmental Health Office, NIEA Natural Environment Division, NIEA Protected Landscapes, DFI Roads, and the Department for Communities Historical Environment Division. The consultations that we've undertaken have highlighted a number of key planning and environmental issues. And just to give you a flavour of some of them, they relate primarily to noise and shadow flicker assessments, landscape and visual amenity considerations, impact upon active peat, and again, the risk associated with peat slide risk. And again, impact upon designated sites with shared environmental services. So that's a flavour. We can answer any more questions on these technical details as part of the Q&A. If we could move to the next slide, please. I want to give an overview on the stakeholder community engagement undertaken to date. We could skip on to the next. We have a lot of placeholders here, so it's not running as smoothly as we'd like. Ørsted, as Kelly had mentioned, are committed to engaging with the local community and keeping the local community up to date on the project as it evolves. To date, Ørsted have engaged 2 local community liaison officers who are on the ground dealing as a point of contact for queries from the local community. There's been 2 leaflet drops within the 3-kilometre radius of the site where the key project milestones have been highlighted to the local community. And just of late, Ørsted have undertaken letter drop to advise local communities of the delay in the process associated with the delay associated with NIEA. There's a project website and email address where local community and stakeholders can seek an update on the project at any stage or get in contact with a member of the project team. I'm going to hand back over to Kelly for a moment to talk about the political engagement that has happened to date. Here we go, Kelly.
Thank you, Orla. If you just want to skip to the next slide, thank you. So as part of the engagement throughout the last 18 months, we've been corresponding with and updating elected reps from the area on the project and the process. Whilst the focus initially has been on West Tyrone MLAs, MP and the Spearin specific councillors, we are committed to widening this engagement out when appropriate. The engagement ensured that all relevant stakeholders were fully informed throughout the various stages of the project, which included the first community consultation event, which took place in November last year, which Orla will talk a wee bit more about. We also undertook one-to-one meetings with MLAs and MPs and offered the same for councillors. Written updates were also sent to relevant stakeholders throughout the process to ensure that they were fully informed. We'll continue to do this engagement and correspondence as we move through the process, and again, very happy to engage wider afield if and when necessary. I'll pass you back to Orla, who'll give you a flavour of the community consultation.
Thanks, Kelly. If we could move to the next slide, please. As this is a major planning application, there's a statutory requirement to undertake formal pre-application community consultation that will then be reported on as part of a pre-application community consultation report, which will be submitted as the part of the planning application. As part of this process, at the end of November last year, a 2-day in-person consultation event was undertaken at the Fairtrees Hotel in Turbine and the Owen Road GSC club rooms in Glenmornan. The event was, I suppose, advertised in line with statutory requirements and on a number of mediums, and it was attended by 17 people over the 2 days. To accommodate people who didn't want to attend the in-person event for reasons relating to COVID, a virtual public consultation room was hosted online from the end of November until the end of January. And again, the consultation information that was made available over the 2 days related to the preliminary site layout design that Olivia shared with you earlier today, an overview of the environmental impact assessment and design evolution that is currently ongoing, and then opportunities for the local community to benefit more widely from the scheme. And if we move on to the next slide, we want to just give elected members an overview of the type of information that local communities were bringing to our own attention. So if we could move on to the next slide, that'd be great. If we could go on to the next slide, please.
Yeah, they're just working on it there at the moment.
I can keep talking because I suppose the next 3 slides really highlight the key areas where feedback was provided from the local communities against their concerns regarding the project, and also where they saw opportunities for the local communities to become more meaningfully engaged. And again, I don't intend to go through each of the points in the table, but just to give you an idea of the feedback that we've gotten and how it's been addressed by the local communities and the project team. There was concern by some of the consultation attendees that there could be real impacts upon the existing wildlife in the area, and a number of the people who attended the consultation event farmed the land and had a real, I suppose, environmental stewardship of the land. The project ecologist wasn't in attendance at the initial consultation event. She will be at the next one, but I think we took time to try and, I suppose, explain the level of environmental studies that are happening with regard to birds and bats and designated sites, and that the aim of the project is really to seek to design out potential impacts upon habitat and wildlife. And just to give an example of that, I'll just use the example of bats, whereby the project team will seek to ensure that there's buffers provided from, let's say, linear features such as forestry where bats fly along, and to ensure that, let's say, turbines are separated from them from a buffer of at least 50 meters. So they were the types of conversations that we're beginning to have with the local community, and are content to have more conversations across a wider range of technical issues such as noise, residential amenity, and again, landscape and visual amenity considerations as well at the next consultation event. And if you could skip ahead, maybe, I think it's 3 slides. Now we're just maybe pushing you too hard at this stage, but just maybe to the slide about the next steps. And again, on the issues that we were discussing in more detail with local communities, we're more than happy to answer any questions on those issues at the questions and answers stage of this presentation. And if we could just go to maybe, I think it'll be the second last slide, apologies, just about the next steps. Yes, just the one after this, please. Just regarding the next steps in the project, we're keen, as Kelly has said, and Orsted are keen to ensure that the council, albeit the application will be determined by DFI planning, that the council are kept up to date on the key issues as the project evolves. We're hoping to conclude the EIA scoping process and the pre-application discussions with DFI plannings and statutory consultees, and to really flesh out the key technical and environmental issues that need to be addressed prior to the submission of the planning application, because we recognise that will represent a more orderly process for all parties involved. There'll be the completion of the environmental studies and baseline studies over summer. And again, we'll be able to update the wind farm layout having regard to that information coming forward. Later in August or September of this year, we're hoping to hold an additional pre-application community consultation event where we will discuss the updated layout with the local communities and again the completed environmental studies. We'll review the information that's provided by the local communities, and that will allow us to finalise the wind farm layout and design, to complete the planning application documents, including the environmental assessment report, and we're hoping to submit the planning application.
Don't know if you can hear us, girls, but we've temporarily lost you there. You're back on again.
Well, I'm not sure when you lost me, but I've just been running through the key steps. So the key steps are to conclude the pre-application discussions that are ongoing, complete the environmental studies and reports, and having a look at those 2 aspects aligned to the feedback that we've gotten from local communities to date, and update the wind farm layout. That will allow us to go back to the community in August or September, probably most likely September at this stage, to hold our second consultation event and discuss the updated layout and take feedback from the local communities in respect of the same. Having regard to the feedback that we get from local communities, this will allow us to finalise the wind farm layout and address their concerns where possible. And that will enable us to complete our environmental impact assessment report and wider planning application and documentation, with an overall aim to submit in December 2022 to DFI planning with all things going well. So that's I'm more than happy to answer any questions today, and apologies there if you missed anything when I dropped out.
Okay, thank you to Kelly, Orla and Olivia for your presentation today, and apologies for the cutouts there. I don't know if it was from your end or from our end. And I'm happy to open it to the floor now for members' comments or questions, if anybody has some. Go ahead, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I was just wondering, obviously this is phase 3 and these are hoping to go for a different type of turbine, but I wanted to know, with this taller, more powerful turbine, what is the longevity, the lifespan, I suppose, because we're seeing a lot of turbines having to be replaced more recently after a certain period of time. So just curiosity, how long do you expect these new turbines, these more powerful turbines to last? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. So modern turbines last longer than the older turbines, so that in fact we're looking to the existing turbines in Owen Ray are coming to the end of their life. They've been operating since 1997, so they've already been operating for 25 years. These new turbines would have would be expected to operate between 30 and 35 years at least, and probably out to 40 years or more.
Okay, thanks for that. Our next indicated speaker, we have Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to all the speakers there. I have a number of questions. Just I suppose I'll start kind of following on from Councillor Ferguson's questions just around the lifespan. Just to ask, what is the plan in place when their lifespan is up, in terms of the replacement or the management or things with that. Another question's around the shadow flicker. I know that there's like different standards across the EU in terms of how far away you can build a wind farm from a home. So I'm just wondering, like, kind of what standards are you using around the distance from the wind farm away from their closest homes, and will those homes who are in closest proximities to the wind farm be given free electricity, or like, you know, what sort of bonuses do they get for their new neighbours in a way? I'm also just wondering as well, I've seen that Ørsted are planning in Northeast Antrim as well to build some wind farms. But in what I was reading, it was to power Amazon. And you've described in the presentation about how many homes these wind farms can power. Are these wind farms intended to power homes, or has there been any corporate deals struck that these wind farms, energy generated, are intended for use? And then just kind of finally on the environmental impact of them. Like wind farms definitely are part of the energy solution to the climate crisis that we're in, but wind farms have also been responsible for some of the worst environmental disasters seen in Ireland in recent years, with permanent damage to rivers and bogs have been caused by peat slide as a result of these developments. And I know you've mentioned peat slide, and there was one in County Galway, the Derry Breen Wind Farm was one example. And then recently in Mean Bog in Donegal, which has caused potentially irreparable damage to important rivers and their ecosystems in Donegal and County Tyrone. And like, are you seeking to actively avoid setting wind farms on active peat bogs, given the important role these habitats play in sequestering carbon and mitigating against severe flooding? Like, because I don't know the actual area you're proposing in terms of the bog there. I think that's all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe I'll just start off on some of them, and Orla, I might pass on to you to answer some others. So thank you very much, Miss O'Neill. So at the end of the life of the wind farm, normally the turbines would be removed And I would say that the majority of the turbines are recyclable. So all the turbine hubs are made of steel, which is easily recyclable. Everything involved in the gearbox is also recyclable. The challenge is with the turbine blades, but Ørsted announced last year that it would no longer landfill any turbine blades. So we are actively looking for solutions to recycle those as well. So once the turbines are removed, it will all be recycled. Nothing will go to landfill. And in terms of what I think in this case, we are looking to repower the site. It makes sense to do so for a site such as this, where it has a wind energy history, and it's an established part of the environment, and also in such an area of good wind resource. So I hope that answers your first question. On the shadow flicker, I will defer to Orla in terms of different standards, but none of the houses or non-involved landowner houses are closer than 1.2 kilometers in this case. And I think we have to assess all houses within 10 times rotor diameter for shadow flicker. And in the event where it's found to breach the stringent requirements, then the wind turbines would have to be switched off at a time when shadow flicker would occur in order to protect residential amenity within 10 times rotor diameter. Also regarding the homes nearest the wind farm and maybe offering free electricity. So the community benefit fund is going to be set up, and it's going to be managed and organised and by the community itself. So what Ørsted normally does is it employs an independent third party who has experience of organising community benefit funds. They would normally go through a process of engaging with the community and setting up a community committee who will then decide how and to whom the funds are distributed. And what you're referring to there has actually been used in some of our other wind farms. It's called a near neighbour scheme. So the community could elect for homes nearest the wind farm to have their electricity bills paid. And in fact, in one wind farm that we're currently building in Kennick's Head in Scotland, one of the local communities has elected to use the community benefit fund solely for that purpose. So that is certainly a possibility, and it is entirely up to the community. The company does not get involved in saying where the money goes, except to make sure it doesn't go on activities that are prohibited by the company ethics. So in terms of the plant in Northeast Amsterdam, Ballykeel, which has as you rightly say, it has a corporate power purchase agreement with Amazon. The reason that had to be done is because there is no public support for, I should say, support schemes in Northern Ireland for renewable energy developments such as wind or solar. It's not part of the contracts for difference that's available in the rest of the UK. And as a result, in order to be able to secure finance to build these, we have to demonstrate that we have a definite buyer for a period of 10 to 15 years. So getting a power purchase agreement with Amazon enabled this wind farm to be built. So in terms of how many homes will be powered by this wind farm, yes, we can say it's up to 90,000 homes, but that does depend on there being a support scheme in place. And my understanding is that there is a serious consideration being given to introducing CFD for wind developments and solar developments in Northern Ireland, and it's our intention and our model is based on taking part in that CFD, which is a very well, at the moment, for example, CFD is probably the best way to fund wind farms because you agree a strike price, and if the electricity market is higher than that, the money is returned. So it's a very economical way of doing it. So we're fully supportive of that proposal. And finally, in terms of the environmental impact, I again will refer to Orla to give a bit more detail, but we are aware of the cases of the Derrybryn Wind Farm and Mean Bog. Peat slide is high on our agenda. There is peat in this area, and there is active peat. And as Orla said, we're doing an awful lot of work to assess exactly where that is and make sure we do not damage it or put any infrastructure on it. It is an Annex 1 priority habitat, and so indeed we're not allowed to put any infrastructure on it. So that is an active part of the environmental impact assessment. Orla, maybe you could provide a bit more detail on the two items, shadow flicker and peat.
Yes, thanks, Councillor O'Neill. I think, Olivia, you've covered off the points quite well. I've very little to add, but in terms of the shadow flicker query, we have to have regard to PPS 18 and the strategic planning policy statement. PPS 18, the guidance in terms of shadow flicker is provided by the best practice guidance document to it. And again, it aligns with the parameters that Olivia outlines. Shadow flicker is most likely to be felt by properties that are located within 500 metres of a turbine. I think it's within 180, I always get this wrong, 180 metres north of existing turbines. So I think the key message to take away maybe is that we're seeking to design out those impacts to minimise likely shadow flicker impacts upon existing residential communities. So when we're considering layout in terms of design, that's a key consideration from our own perspective. And as what Olivia has mentioned, there is significant separation distances already underground in terms of the proposed turbines in existing residential properties. So that's in shadow flicker, and I can come back to you on queries on that, Councillor O'Neill, if needs be. And then in terms of the peat issue that you've raised, and I think that's an issue that the wind industry is very keenly aware of, and what happened at Mean Bog was very disappointing as well. So we'll be addressing that through the submission of a number of technical reports as part of the environmental assessment, one being the peat slide risk assessment. We're in consultation with Geological Survey in Northern Ireland, Lochs Agency, NIA Natural Environment Division, who are all, I suppose, putting the project team through the paces in terms of what they want in terms of the technical assessment. And I'm going to repeat myself again, a key issue is the avoidance of placing turbines on areas of deep peat, areas that could be affected, peat areas that could be affected by slopes or hydrology. So that's been considered widely by the project team, and we've been advised by, we've run our preliminary approaches to these issues by Geological Survey Northern Ireland and Lochs Agency, who are content. We've gotten feedback from them who are content with our approach. Now they'll have to review the reports and technical studies when they're put in front of them. And we're also hoping to speak to NIA Natural Environment Division at greater length about this. I think we've been disappointed that we haven't got to meet with them to date, but we're hoping to meet with them in the upcoming months around peat slide, and then as you've mentioned as well, impacts upon active peat that we'll be seeking to avoid by way of design. So that's maybe my contribution finished on your queries, Councillor O'Neill, but again, if you've any other queries, just let us know.
Thank you. Can I just check, what does CFD stand for in terms of the financing of these? Olivia, you had mentioned it.
Sorry, it's contracts for difference.
All right, okay. And no, that's why I'm terrible at acronyms. And so who is financing this one farm? That's, I didn't know that there's no public support schemes at all, and that's obviously part of the energy strategy.
Yeah.
For the north.
Yes, that's correct. So we in terms we're financing, the company is financing itself, but in order to be able to do that, it needs to have security of a purchaser for a period of 10 to 15 years to de-risk it sufficiently for the investment to be approved.
So do you have a purchaser for this one farm?
For this particular wind farm?
Yeah.
Not yet, no. I mean, we're at a very early stage. That would be something that would be looked at once a grid connection offer has been received. And as I said, we are hoping at that stage that there will be a contracts for difference system in place in Northern Ireland that we can participate in, which would be our preferred route.
Thank you.
Okay, members, just checking. Can you hear us here in the Guild Hall?
Yeah.
Yeah, just we had lost you there, so unfortunately we didn't pick up that response. But our next indicated speaker I have is Councillor Kelly. You there, Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I suppose some of the questions have been maybe in part addressed. I wonder, maybe would you say a little bit more around the habitat management plan for the existing site and turbines? You mentioned that the overstructure would be largely recycled. You didn't mention the substructure, and I was just wondering what happens to the concrete substructure that's currently on site around those turbine bases, and what you propose to do, in terms of the long-term management of that. Clearly, it's an alkaline presence in an acidic environment, and it has the potential to alter not just the peatland itself, but the aquifers. So maybe if you could just pick up on that issue for me. I wonder, would you maybe say a little bit more around the NIEA concerns and the delay to the application for planning? Is it just solely around issues of peat slide and active peatland? There are, I mean, I'm conscious of the site and I'm aware of it, and there's significant peat deposits there. So it's not just active peatland, but the broader peatland that may not be considered active technically, but would be very important in terms of our precious carbon storage. And I'm aware that on the proposed expanded site, some of the peatland is maybe 12 to 15 meters deep, which is a significant reserve. And so just wondering how you intend to manage putting the turbines in that sort of sensitive sort of carbon storage area that may not be just technically active peatland, but does have an active role in terms of climate change and flood alleviation. I wonder, would you just maybe say a wee bit more around the visual impact? The proposed turbines are almost 100 meters taller than the existing turbines at Owen Area 1. I think that's going to have a significant visual impact. And just in terms of the graphics in your presentation, are they the proposed scale of the new turbines in those photos that you've included, or is that the existing smaller height turbines that you've incorporated in your flyer and in your presentation to council? And just, I think you mentioned, you've addressed the active peatland part. I wonder, just in terms of other species, not the active peat itself or the sphagnum moss, but like the curlews nesting and things like the newts in that area. How do you propose to manage that in terms of the expanded site? I think that's maybe. Oh yeah, just you mentioned green energy. Obviously, this is a peatland, and you have to kind of dig up part of the peatland in order to install the turbines. So I know one of the criticisms has been this may be sustainable energy, but it may not technically be green energy, because how can it be green energy if you're digging up peatlands in order to generate wind energy? So maybe if you just touch on your point around green energy, because I've heard that criticism that it's not really green energy if you're digging up peatlands to create it. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. Again, I will address as much as I can to begin with, and I'll pass over to Orla to pick up some of the points. So in terms of the decommissioning of the Owen Area 1 and 2 sites and the substructure, usually the concrete bases are left in place, because to remove them actually would cause further damage to the peat than to leave them in place. Normally they are covered up. They can put peat over them, or they can leave them in situ. That will be considered as part of our outline habitat management plan for the wind farm. And just to talk a bit more about that habitat management plan, so a good chunk of it will be looking at restoration of what we call inactive peat up on the site. So the peat up there is, as you say correctly, parts of it are very deep. Parts of it are active, but actually a large chunk of it is inactive, and it has been subject to agricultural practices and other things which have degraded it to such an extent that it's in quite poor condition. We are looking in detail with our ecologists at identifying areas that can be restored, and that will be part of our habitat management plan. The habitat management plan will also look at other species, so looking at opportunities to improve wetland breeding birds. I would say that we've been doing regular surveys up there from 2018. Curlews have not been spotted up there, or newts in the wider area that I'm aware of, but we can check with our ecologists and confirm that for you. There have been bats in the area, and there has been a merlin nesting site identified. and the current design has, as Orla referred to earlier, has been done in such a way to allow for that and to make sure that there are no negative impacts on those species. So there will be a very detailed ecological impact assessment done as part of the EIA, which will look at all the years of surveys we have done and address any concerns there. I think you referred to there about the delays with NIEA. Just to clarify, they are not delays due to concerns about the wind farm. They are delays due to a lack of resource in NIEA NED. They just simply haven't had enough. They don't have enough people. So they've only told us, we submitted our scoping request back in July, and we have been told as of this morning that they have been able to just recently assign someone to look at our scoping request. We have had discussions, one very brief call with them back in October, and peat is something they are concerned about, and peat slide as well, but we haven't had a full response from them yet, so we are awaiting that. Yeah, so in terms of the broader peatland up there not considered active, we will, during our design, we're seeking to design out any impact on active peat and indeed inactive peat that we assess could be restored. So we're doing that with a combination of ecology and hydrology. So where the hydrology indicates that active peat could be restored in an inactive peat area, we're seeking to avoid any infrastructure in those areas also. So in terms of LVIA, I'm going to leave that one to Orla. We've engaged an LVIA consultant to look at this in detail. The graphics in the presentation itself are pictures of the existing turbines. In the pre-application community consultation back in November, and in our online exhibition, we included photo montages showing how the turbines would look from a number of viewpoints. And once we have the final design layout, we will be looking at in excess of 21 viewpoints. They will be included, and those photo montages will also be included in the second pre-application community consultation, so that the local community can see what how it will look when it's completed, so we can make those available to you at the time. And then in terms of green energy, yes, I think I have heard that before, that it's not really green energy because there is some carbon dioxide release in terms of manufacture and construction. I would say again that in terms of peatland, we're seeking to avoid any peatland that is active or could be restored, and it would be inactive peatland. So in fact, this dried up peatland doesn't have a high value in terms of carbon sequestration. So we're looking to introduce restoration areas where it will increase the carbon sequestration. But also I would say that the amount of fossil fuels that an operating wind farm displaces from the grid is usually within 6 months or a year of being operating, it's offset any carbon dioxide emissions that the wind farm itself has generated. So there will be in excess of 34, 40 years of a net carbon benefit to having a wind farm on the site. Orla, maybe you could talk a little bit more about the LVIA for Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Kelly. In terms of the LVIA and likely impacts arising, I think everybody is aware that the proposed turbines are significantly taller than what's on the site, and indeed the consented Craignackapple turbines would have been 111 metres high. So that this is an additional, I can count to be additional 45 metres in height. So in preliminary discussions that we've had with the Department for Infrastructure and then NIEA Landscapes branch, who really are the competent authority to look at landscape in terms of the decision maker, and they have highlighted this as an issue that they'll be looking at more detail. They've specified a number of viewpoints. Verbally, we need to get this in writing from NIA and the department, where they want the project team and indeed the landscape and visual amenity assessment consultant to look at the impact it will have on on designated sites and also scheduled monuments and also the wider AONB. So it's very much, we're aware of it, and we're looking at this as we progress through the project evolution. The project team are, under the guidance of the landscape and visual impact consultant, are trying to minimise the impact of the turbines within the environment, trying to group the turbines together so that it appears one unit in the skyline. In terms of height, this height is probably the tallest turbines that have been consented in the north are at the Carlackie wind farm, which is in the Sperrins as well, and I think they're at 149 metres. And then there's another RES scheme in the Causeway Coast and Glens, Armoy scheme, I think, and they're at 149 metres. So turbines are getting taller, and I'd maybe just highlight Olivia's point earlier that she made, that it's taught. I know that in South and across in Scotland, the turbines, we're seeing turbines at 180 metres and at 200 metres. And we're aware that it'll be an issue that'll require close inspection by the department and the council and community and wider stakeholders. And maybe just to add to a point that Olivia had made on the issue of peat and peat depth on the site, Councillor Kelly, that you'd made. So our ecologist has advised that there are areas of significant peat depth, and I think they will most probably be avoided for peat stability issues. I don't think there'd be in anybody's interest to build on areas of 14 and 15 metres. But NIEA, Natural Environment Division, they've actually a very good guidance note that in the absence of getting to speak to them directly, that it's become ingrained in the project team's brain, where they give advice on active peat, inactive peat, and areas that have the potential to become active. So it's something that we're really addressing as part of the wider environmental impact project team.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Edwards.
Chair, thanks for bringing me in. I'll be brief, given that most of these issues have already been debated. I was going to ask about the Community Development Fund and some of the environmental issues, especially peat landslide, but they've been covered quite well. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the existing infrastructure, will there be sort of major upgrades that will be needed, or will the existing sort of infrastructure there be able to suffice? For example, will there be like major upgrades to transformers or any other infrastructure connected to the national grid? I'd also like to ask when the EIA will be fully complete and available to members and the public in terms of timelines. And also in the presentation it mentioned as well about is it something around a clause in there for local businesses in terms of construction that may be able to tender for the work? I would just like some further comments on that, but that's all my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Orla, would you like to
Yes.
answer
Yes,
the...
yeah, in terms of an existing infrastructure, like on the site, tracks that are existing for ONRE 1 and 2, there'll be an effort from the designers and engineers to reuse those as much as possible. The tracks themselves won't be wide enough to accommodate the taller turbines, so there'll be a need to upgrade them. In terms of the grid connection, I'll allow Olivia to come in with more detail on this, but there will be a requirement for a new grid connection that will come forward separately as part of a future project, either delivered by Ørsted or NIE. In terms of just the EIA being fully complete, we're hoping it'll be fully complete and submitted in December of this year. We've encountered a number of delays to date, but our hope is that it'll be ready and available for in the local area in December of this year. And I'll allow Olivia just come back to you on the local businesses issue.
Thanks very much, Orla. So just on the national grid, so the existing connection for the ONRE wind farm is a DSO connection, so it's a district rather than a transmission level connection, a distribution level connection rather than a transmission level connection. This larger wind farm will require a connection to the transmission grid. We have had preliminary discussions with Sony, but they have not been able to tell us where it will connect in or which route will be possible to take, and that won't be possible until we submit the grid application itself. However, we will require a new substation on site, and that will be part of the planning application. In terms of the local businesses, so it's I referred to what we're calling a Meet the Buyers event. So around, we think probably around the same time as we're doing the second PACC, so the second community consultation event, we'll also have a dedicated event which we will invite local businesses and suppliers, and we'll certainly be coordinating with your own economic unit to get a list of potentially interested suppliers. And in there we will have our delivery team, so they're the team that actually construct the wind farms once planning and grid have been achieved. And also we'll be providing information on our procurement processes, so it will enable suppliers to bid for contracts should they wish to do so when it comes to constructing the wind farm. And I should also mention that as part of the EIA, we'll be doing a full economic report, which will detail the expected jobs creation and the benefit to the local GDP. That will come once the final design of the wind farm has been, once the final design has been agreed, then we can proceed with doing those calculations.
Okay, Councillor Edwards. I've no other further indicated speakers at this point. Members, so speak now or forever hold your peace. In the event of no further speakers then, members, on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank Kelly, Orla and Olivia for presenting to the committee today, which was a very informative and interesting presentation, and to thank councillors as well for their comments and questions. So wish you all the best, girls.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, members, we'll just wait for the ICT officer to give us the green light to proceed. Okay, members, I think we're free to proceed. So that takes us to item 6, Chair's business. I don't have any Chair's business and nobody has been in contact with me, you'll be glad to hear. Before we move to item 7, which is the matters arising, just want to note a couple of declarations of members' interests in the meantime. Councillor Dan Kelly has declared for a non-pecuniary interest, item 5, as a member of Glenmartin Community Association and Owen Roe O'Neill, and I would declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 20 as a member of Castlereagh St Eugene's. So, members, item 7 is matters arising from the previous meeting, and that was Wednesday the 9th of March, and that was pages 25 to 38. Any matters arising? Councillor Tierney. You're okay. Okay. Councillor Edwards, ER 58/22. Go ahead, Stephen.
Chair, apologies. I was actually meant to get in touch with you to come in under chaired items, but this is the most relevant section of the minutes. I could bring it in on. Chair, I want to raise a similar issue to what's on the minutes in terms of development of community resources within the council area. The Newton Stewart Community Forum have approached myself in terms of developing an all-weather pitch in Newton Stewart, Chair, in vacant land that's close by the existing play park there in Mourne Park. It's their opinion that developing the area into sort of a kickabout area would be a final piece in a puzzle in terms of catering for youth in there, where young children can use the new play park and the older children will have an all-weather playing sort of facility. I do believe council officers have been engaged in this issue already. However, it was deemed that a proposal this committee was needed to advance it. And Chair, and the wider issue, I'm aware that there's major issues around capital working group. There's major pressures there. But in light of this, in light of the request from the local community, I would be, if with your indulgence, Chair, happy to propose that the council work with the Newtonshire Community Forum to look at the feasibility of developing all-weather pit, Chair, and look at options and bring a report back to this committee. Again, with your indulgence, Chair, I would like to make that proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards, if you could just put that into the chat box for us so members can, I don't envisage any opposition. In the meantime, Councillor Edwards, oh, you have it there already. That was very quick.
Thank you, Chair.
Members,
happy to second, Chair.
Seconded by Alderman Hussey. And members, I don't not sensing any opposition to that. So, are you happy enough, Karen? Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, officers will have a look at this and we'll bring a further update report back as soon as we can. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and moving on then, Councillor Duffy, item 8. You want none on, is it? Oh, sorry. Any other?
No.
Sorry. Any other matters arising first before we move to item 8?
Chair,
No more
it's
matters
Angela
arising.
here. Can I come in?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Dobbins.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm going to bring this under the ER 5922, just as a reminder that 22nd of April this year is the Earth Hour, and it's just a reminder to council officers that whilst we have celebrated Earth Hour every year, I'm just making sure that once again will be acknowledged within our council area. Thanks, Chair.
Through you, Chair, members will take that on board. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dobbins. Members, no further indicated speakers, so we'll move to item 8. Councillor Duffy has indicated.
Chair, I'm happy to come up, but do you want the council officer to go through it first?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek the reallocation of funding towards the upkeep of Ballyarnett Racecourse to improve pedestrian access and accessibility. Members, you will be aware that the park was upgraded a number of years ago. However, over the passage of time, the verges have encroached, reducing the width of the pathways, and we are seeking to reallocate funds in order to undertake some repairs to the paths, which would involve scraping and quarry dusting on the path surfaces, and our finance department have confirmed that funding is available to do this, and members, we are seeking the reallocation of this funds today, and happy to take any comments or questions that members have.
Thanks, Karen. I was getting a bit ahead of myself there because I was late to the meeting. Councillor Duffy, go ahead.
Thank you, now, Chair. Ready to speak. No, Karen, I just want to absolutely welcome the report. I can't propose it as I'm not on the committee, but I want to thank Colin and Desi for the work that they have done on this issue. It is something that I have raised with them on a number of occasions. It is a really popular path, and I think probably over COVID it became very popular and got quite run down, and was at times difficult and impassable in terms of puddles and muck and all the rest of it, but it still is an enjoyable path to walk on. So I welcome the fact that this report has come to committee for approval. Also would just like to thank Brendan for the work that he did recently. There was a number of trees and branches that had blown down and had actually blocked part of the path, so he was out and quite promptly to read that up after following the request. So no, just thanks for bringing this report, and I know residents in the area will be grateful that muddy paws won't be such an issue coming back from a walk. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. I see Councillor Jackson's happy to propose it on the chat box there. Councillor Tierney, go ahead.
Chair, thank you. The quick that request for item 8 was on. I don't think you're the only one getting ahead of yourself, but I think it's very encouraging to see this report come before Council. Councillor Duffy has already outlined the issues that are being faced by people who are using Ballyarna Country Park. I often think that Ballyarna Country Park, when you look at the size of it, it's hard to describe it as a hidden gem, but that's exactly what it is. Whenever you actually get out and walk around it, it's an absolutely beautiful park that we have right on our doorsteps for those of us who live in the Ballyarna area. I'm delighted that this is before Council, delighted to see that this work is being done, because it shows the commitment that this Council have to addressing the issues that have been raised directly by residents, and these have been raised by residents for quite some time. So it's great to see that the work's going to be done, particularly heading into the summer months, and I would hope that it will be done and completed by then. The money's there to do it, then it's only welcome that we should be taking this forward. Residents in that particular area love getting out and in and around the country park, so trying to make sure that we're addressing the issues that are coming and making sure that we're not ignoring the Ballyarna Country Park because of some of the activities that can go on in it from time to time. I think it's important that Council stamping our ownership and our commitment to the Ballyarna Country Park is going to help encourage the residents from right around the Ballyarna area to use that particular facility. So I see that Councillor Jackson has proposed it, so I'm happy as a member of this committee to second it. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. And with Councillor Dobbins, go ahead, Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, yeah, as the last previous speakers have said, but can I just come outside the box a wee bit? Whilst it is a beautiful and park and it's well used, there is a major issue on the road leading into our Ballyarna Park, and the issue being it's a death trap to pedestrians that use that road to get access onto the park. So look, Chair, I know there has been a lot of attempt to get DFI Roads Division to have a look at this, and I know there's other councillors and myself have got them down to look at the road, and they did lower the speed of that section of road. But I think we should be going further, and I would like to propose that maybe as a committee that we should be asking look, DFI, the Roads Division, to have a look at that road again with view of pedestrian safety into that Ballyarna Park, of maybe a crossing or something else that would keep the residents and the users and with safety in mind, because that road is treacherous.
Chair, through you, Councillor Dobbins, if the committee are happy, we can write to DFI in relation to this issue on behalf of the committee. I do know that the new Divisional Roads Manager, Daniel Healy, is now in place, and officers are intending to meet with them in the coming weeks.
I'll second that proposal from Councillor Dobbins to write to DFI. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Karen.
Yeah, and presuming nobody has any objection to that course of action, Alderman Hussey, I see in the chat box you're seeking to propose an addition to the recommendation. I think it's really outside it's a separate issue, essentially. Road service are probably in or the lead in terms of ownership of those footpaths.
Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I suppose It's really following on from the previous proposal, which was accepted on the back of the current recommendation. But previously, the former Strabane District Council did ensure that the footpath from Castlereagh Town out to the cemetery was kept to its full width, and the inside, particularly of that footpath, was, I presume, under contract from road service, was maintained by council. You yourself will be aware of the issue of the Castlereagh to Spalmont footpath, which is severely constrained by particularly the inside edge, with overgrowth, moss, etc., build up on that. Now, I did notice lately that at Mahermason, from Mahermason up to Kerry Road, there's a footpath, and I'm not sure what agency undertook the works, but that footpath was edged and returned to its full width. I'm content if this doesn't go as a recommendation reference 5.1, but that council, maybe as a separate proposal, would, while they're writing to road service, ask that the same facility as was provided at Mahermason, reference the footpath there, is afforded to the residents of Castlereagh, particularly on that stretch, Castlereagh to Spalmont and Castlereagh to the cemetery. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. I'm just going to bring Karen in here, just if she wants to make a comment.
Yep, through you, Chair. Members, we're more than happy as officers if the committee want for us to write to DFI in this regard, and just to confirm that those works that were carried out were actually carried out by DFI directly rather than council. So members were more than happy to include that in any correspondence to the Divisional Roads Manager on behalf of the committee.
Chair, if I may, can I thank Karen for that? I appreciate the update as to who actually carried out the work, but the precedent has been set by road service, and I would like to think that they will continue that type of service where it's needed. And as you know yourself, Chair, it is needed on both of those walkways. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. And I see Alderman Devaney is happy to second that proposal, Derek. So again, I'm not envisaging any opposition to that. So Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me on. Just, Chair, Chair, I would raise the issue too with Kiln Village. Technically, the section referred to as the Learmore Road. There's a footpath there, and I mean, there wasn't last week or the week before, whereby there was a push for walking to school, and there was a lot of parents and children walking or bicycles that were parked at the bottom of the village to take children up. And I mean, footpaths just wide enough. Again, the same issue with growth coming out from the field side, and it's just left the footpath very narrow. So that's another section there. But Alderman Devaney's already seconded the proposal for. I was going to come in and do that anyway. But thank you, Chair.
Chair, I'm content for that to be added.
Okay, members, we're veering badly off the item topic, but Councillor Edwards.
Chair, not to add to or anything, but I've raised this issue as well. And sure, I won't be adding it to this proposal on the Mile Road, and Newton sure it is DFI's responsibility to clear the roads, and if there's vegetation that's coming out of especially private owned land, it's up to the DFI will go after the private landowner to get it cleared. That's what they're currently doing on the Mile Road and Newton Shirt, and I have raised this one as well in Castlereagh as well, but it's up to the DFI to pursue the private landowner in this, Chair. I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. We'll move on then to item 9, is bilingual signage, and I think Connor's taking this first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Is to inform members of the outcome of recent applications to provide bilingual signage at Fort Road, Castlereagh, Lismore Grove, Silent Mills, and the village, Rosemount Derry. The applications were received, and the plebiscite, as per the normal process, has taken place in each of the streets, with the results as outlined in the table on section 3.1. So, in accordance with Derry City Strabane Council policy on street naming and postal numbering, The plebiscites of Lismore Grove, Sion Mills and the Village Rosemount area achieved the minimum consent threshold of 67% required for bilingual signage to be considered. And again, in accordance with the policy, the plebiscite of Fort Road, Castledare did not achieve the minimum consent threshold of 67% required for the signage to be considered by Council. On that basis, the recommendation is to proceed with erection of bilingual signage at Lismore Grove, Sion Mills and the Village Rosemount area.
Thanks for that, Conor. And Councillor McGinley has proposed the recommendation and seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Alderman Kerry, can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification here, Chair. I know it's been raised on several occasions about the response to these, and I know you can't make people respond. But I do note there, as I say, Fort Road, there's 12 addresses. 6 of them have responded, or 6, so there's 50% response. Lismore Gardens there, you've got a 70% response. I note there, the Village and Rosemount there, you have 8% response. You know, there's 1 response from 1 dwelling house out of 12 addresses, and that's 1 person. So effectively, it's 1 person has just decided, I'm content enough with this and put this on, and they've kind of imposed it upon the rest. And now maybe the rest didn't want it or not, but we don't have a figure. I know we have to reach 67% positive to go forward with this. I'm just wondering, have we got anything in this whether legislation in regards to this that we have a minimum response figure? No, is that included in it? No, we need to reach at least a 67% threshold. But do we have anything whereby we need to have a certain percentage to respond? Because I mean, this last one at Rosemount, it's 1 person has responded from 1 address. I'm only asking the question, using that as an example there, and I'm just clarifying the position. Is it the case whereby, is it someone who resides on a road who requests it, or can anyone request it on a certain road? Just for clarification from my own self, for I don't seem to have that the documentation in regards to this in front of me. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in.
Chair, through you, members, we will send a copy of the policy to all members of the committee for your information, and certainly the policy as adopted by Council, and it's again Council's current policy, which again members could review. We are obviously, as you will know, following a previous notice of motion in the process of updating the policy, and we hope to bring a further report to members in the next couple of months in terms of that particular notice of motion and the proposals for the policy. But we will circulate the policy now after today's meeting to members, so you have a copy of it, and members, the recommendations that are brought before you today are in line with the policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. Alderman Hussey, same item.
Thank you, Chair. Several meetings ago, members may recall I asked for an update on the cost of the project, the dual language signage. I haven't received that yet. I don't know that if any other committee member has received it. Would it be possible a report was referred to there, that we would have an update on how much the project of the bilingual signage is actually costing? Thank you, Chair.
Yep, through you, Chair. Members, we intend to include, all the costs of the current policy and the policy as amended that has been accepted as a notice of motion. What we had intended to do, members, with your approval, is in May to actually have a workshop with members to work through some of the issues in relation to the policy, and indeed, I suppose, the current considerations that officers are having in terms of being able to bring the policy before you for consideration. So members, if you're happy to do that, we will do that, but certainly when we intend to bring a report back very soon, and that will include all detail in terms of costs associated with the policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it, Karen.
Councillor Tierney.
Chair, thank you. I was actually coming in on the back of the report to ask a question of the officers, but given some of the previous remarks, I feel obliged to try and respond. The first thing I would say, and I knew this whenever I looked at it, that this was going to come up. It comes up month after month after month around the number of responses. The policy is a policy, and that's it. It doesn't matter what that graph in 3.1 tells us is who met the policy and who didn't, and that's what we should be looking at, not the number of responses, unless at the meeting in May the policy somehow is relooked at and changed. But for now, that's what we have to work on with. And I do caution against the word project, because a project by its definition runs out. This isn't a project, this is a policy within this council, and I don't see it coming to an end anytime soon. But that being said, Chair, as you drive down the Hiller Road in Galia and you take a right, you head onto Illickmore Park, Glencall Park and Cashel Hill Park. It can be quite, if you don't know the area, it can be quite misguiding and misleading if you're going to one particular estate. The street sign that was at the entrance at the right-hand turn has been removed, and they have been placed further on the estate, which is making it more difficult for drivers who are trying to navigate their way around that particular estate. I'm wondering, are council aware of why it was moved, why it was taken away, and can we have it back to its original place, because that's where the residents want it, and it's where it's most clear if you're going to any of those three estates. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, we'll look into that and come back to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McGinley.
Good, Chair, for letting me in. I wasn't intending just to propose the recommendations as I had put in the chat box earlier, but given comments that were made after that, I felt the need to speak. I joined this committee back in August, and every single meeting that we come to that Irish language signage is mentioned, there's the exact same comments made by the exact same people. And I find it astounding that it causes such, controversy. At the end of the day, Irish speakers have rights to see the Irish language in their communities. My nephew is 8 years old and is at an Irish language school, and he has every right to come out and see the name of his street in his first language as people who want to see it in the English language. Sinn Féin did actually propose a motion that would change the threshold to 15%, which would address the issue of minimum addresses not responding, but other parties called that in and rejected it. So we could look possibly at amending the policy, but I find it exceptionally, I just don't understand how people have such an objection to a street sign. It blows my mind.
Thank you, members. All points well made. Members, Councillor McGinley is quite right. We have the same discussion every month. I think if members are going to ask questions of the policy, the officers, then at the very least they should appraise themselves of that policy before coming to this meeting. Members, I'm not going to pursue this discussion anymore. As I say,
Chair
we have the same thing every month.
Chair sorry, Chair John Boyle here, just to concur with your remarks. Absolutely. No, I mean, there's no reason for us to be going over this month after month after month. The policy is there. The policy is available for people to read. If they're not familiar with it, then that's for them. And so just to associate myself with the remarks of Councillor McGinley and my colleague Councillor Tierney, and indeed yourself, Chair.
Okay, members, I'm going to bring that item to a close. Members, our next items are for information, items 10 to 18. So if any member wishes to raise an issue, I have Councillor O'Neill on item 16, and any other members, could you please indicate in the chat box if possible?
Thanks, Chair. So it's just on my boy, and I had raised at the full council, not last month, but the month before, just around the correspondence from the European Commission which I've sent to all councillors, which was examining the failures of our authorities across the north to pursue planning enforcement action against unauthorised developments like quarrying and landfills. And so I hope councillors have had the chance to read that letter from the European Commission. And the thing I wanted to highlight in it is the failure of the DFI to implement recommendation 9 of the Mills report from 8 years ago. And just to clarify, recommendation 9 states that to make changes to the current planning enforcement policy to no longer allow the granting of retrospective planning permission for sand and gravel workings. So as the letter from the European Commission states, it's this an action from DFI on recommendation 9 is completely at odds with European case law. And obviously this has implications for us with regards to Maboy. But like we really have to ask, why have they done nothing about it, allowing quarries to operate without planning permission? And you know, as well as Maboy at Kildog Road, we've seen consequences there. And it really is, you know, it's a real failure of planning, and it's and we've seen kind of similar situations in the south where the European Commission's pursued that and fined the government in the south €15,000 a day for the negligence. So I had proposed that we write to DFI kind of at the last council, but councillors, because they hadn't seen the letter, hadn't you know, they wanted to wait until that. So since I've sent it out twice now to everybody, I'll just make that proposal again, just to write to DFI to just ask them why there's been failure to implement recommendation 9 of the Mills report into Maboy, because this is where this came from, which is entirely at odds with EU case law, given that it's had 8 years to do so. So if I can, I'll just put that in the chat box. So it's just a letter. Sorry.
Yeah, if you put that in the chat box, Maeve. In the meantime, I need a seconder as well.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Chair,
Councillor Jackson, go ahead.
Chair, happy to support the proposal. And I want to thank Maeve for circulating the letter from the European Commission in 2 occasions, and it is an interesting read. But one of the points that I wanted to make, and one of the things that jumped out at me is how much we rely on legislation from Europe to ensure environmental protections. And that's something, I know some parties campaigned for Brexit and some fought against it, but regardless of the outcome, we need to ensure that whatever protections are afforded to us through the European legislation, that they're continued throughout or post-Brexit, because I have little faith in the British government that they would afford the same levels of protection against environmental damage as what we had previously enjoyed through Europe. So that being said, I'm more than happy to support the proposal that was put forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. On this item, I have Councillor Tierney as well.
Chair, just to say that, first of all, thanks to Councillor O'Neill. I suppose, first of all, for her patience. I know she tried to propose this before at Council and at Committee, but also thanks for sending out the information twice, because it was very useful. We have no issue in supporting the proposal. As the proposal says, it is 8 years that they've had. They review this. So I think that's in many ways part of the role of a local councillor, is trying to find out from central government where and why they haven't done what they've committed to do. So we have no issue in doing that and taking all on board with what Councillor Jackson says in relation to Europe and our environmental protections that come from Europe. We're no issue whatsoever in supporting the writing of this letter. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Tierney. Members are not sensing any opposition to the proposal, which has been proposed by Councillor O'Neill and seconded by Councillor Jackson. So I'll take that as unanimous. And members, our next item, I'll go back, is to item 11, and there's a couple of indicated speakers on this. And first of whom is Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in this regard. Chair, disappointed we have got a reply as well through the PCSP in regards to that, for they had also wrote in regards to the schools at St Eugene's and Victoria Bridge and Castlelake High School and Kiln Primary School, and it is disappointing that we're no further forward, because it's a main route, as I have alluded earlier, Chair. Kiln Primary School had it was walking or cycling to school there a few weeks ago, and I mean, when you're walking up there and you feel the force of those lorries passing you know, and even vehicles on it too, you know, they are in excess of the speed limit. Now, hopefully, as I say, Chair, given the SIDs that have been in operation around there, that and they had been in Victoria Bridge as well, that hopefully if we're able to maybe forward that information through the PCSP on to the department, that we can maybe get a wee bit more of a push. But it's just disappointing that again these three schools within our own DEA, Chair, have been neglected in this regard. So just a comment more than anything else. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in.
Thank you, Alderman. We may await the next round, judging by the response. Councillor Edwards.
Chair, thank you. On the same issue, and I've raised the 20-mile-an-hour speed zones with DFI locally and with the Minister, not now when the programmes are delivered, but as part of phase 1 and as part of the development of phase 1 and the development of phase 2 on the project, and especially St Eugene's. I'm a Board of Governors in St Eugene's and Victoria Bridge and Clary Primary School as well, Kiln and Castlelake High School are the areas of concern to me. And unfortunately, those schools didn't score high enough as part of phase 1 and phase 2. So I think that hopefully they'll be part of phase 3. I know the letter sort of alludes to that. So hopefully the next infrastructure minister, or indeed the current one, will be able to deliver a third phase of the 20-mile speed limits. I think every school should have them, Chair. Primary and secondary, I think every school should have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. It shouldn't be limited to a few. And that's something now I have put into the department and to the Minister. And I hope that once phase 3 is going ahead, that Council and all their members can support that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair, and can I thank Karen for sending on the letter. I've been requesting this for some considerable time, back to phase 1, not just phase 2. There was considerable disappointment that none of the schools in the Derg area have been included in either phases 1 or phase 2, but with particular concern at the 3 running along that main route. It's a main route from the A5 linking through to the Lakelands, through to the hospital and the Skiln, etc., etc. It's already been referred to there by Councillor Edwards and Councillor Kerrigan about the traffic on that road. There's a lot of traffic, and it's not just small cars, etc. Major transport companies with large lorries flying along that road, causing safety concerns at all 3 locations. I note the private secretary's reply is dependent on budget settlements, so it's a case of phase 3 if it comes, and fingers crossed that we can be included. I have sought and looked at the scoring mechanism for all of the schools that have been included and have not been included. I find myself scratching my head as to how they actually developed the scoring mechanism, because it doesn't reflect the actuality on the ground of those 3 particular schools. And I see other schools that have achieved the 20 mile per hour zone, and that's not begrudged in the slightest. But I scratch my head and think, well, how did they get it when schools that I know are in a much more dangerous position didn't? I welcome the reply and the indication that we may get this provision on the schools in question. I just trust that when the Assembly gets back up and running again, if it gets back up and running again, that this matter can be addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman, and I too, as a Derg councillor, share the previous member's disappointment and concern that none of those Derg schools were included in round 2, but as been outlined previously, hopefully round 3 all went well. Some, if not all, will be included in the next round. So moving on then, members, to item 12, I have Councillor Jackson.
Good Chair, and it's just in relation to the water improvement scheme in the water side, and of course, hopefully everybody in this chamber would welcome any improvement to the water network. When reading the report, there was a number of things that jumped that caused me alarm, and the scheme is due to start next month, starting on Turbine Road and moving on to Trench Road. This, and I appreciate that there's traffic management. There's a traffic management scheme proposed to be put in place. This is a very, very busy thoroughfare, and the disruption that this will inevitably cause is something that will cause us, cause the local community a lot of alarm, and it's something that I will take up with NI Water separately through the dedicated elected reps phone number. But I think it's right that we put it on record. This scheme is due to take place over a period of 12 months, which is a considerable period of time, which will cause significant disruption. So I would hope, and I want to put it on record here, is that, and particularly in relation to the Trench Road, there's a primary school that's located in that, and along that road. It would make more sense that the work done in that locality is done during the summer period. So given that there's a 12-month schedule that's put in place, I would hope that NI Water would listen to any concerns of the local community and minimise the disruption that would cause by timing the work to be done in a more appropriate time. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to highlight these concerns of this committee, but I will take it up with NI Water privately. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor, and your comments will be duly noted. Councillor Riley on the same issue.
Yeah, Chair, thanks for bringing me in, and thanks to Councillor Jackson for raising many of the same points I'm going to raise in relation to this. Yes, it is good to see investment in the water infrastructure servicing this part of the water side and wider afield, but I do think that the calendar needs to be looked at quite in detail form by NI Water, not only as Councillor Jackson has said in relation to the schools and the businesses and others that are there and the operating times, but also the likes of ourselves and council, any services, any festivals, any events that we're planning to happen in and around that part of the water side during those 12 months. We should be doing all that we can to minimise the disruption to the citizens that live in there and the businesses that operate there. So I think it is useful that we have this advanced notice from NI Water, and I do think that the most important part of the report today is the part 6 in the frequently asked questions section, where we're talking about having that dedicated work between the residents and the contractor. So I'm glad to see that it is front loaded into this work, that there'll be that connectivity between the contractor and the people who live and work there. But I think it is something that our wider council team need to be fully aware of and incorporated into the work that we do for the next 12 months ahead. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Martin. And Alderman Devaney on item 12 also.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And while I put on record that DEP will welcome the investment here to enhance and upgrade the water line in these areas, but like the previous speakers, I just want to agree with them and say, look, we need to minimise disruption. And this, there are a lot of traffic travels through this area, through schools, shops. A lot of people take them roads leaving even from the A5, that back road up in to get into Drumahoe and to the water side. And I do believe it's important that NI Water listen to the concerns and around the issues and do everything to minimise the disruption. Just wanted to agree with everything else that was said, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman. Members, we'll go to item 14, and I have Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair. I want to take this opportunity. It's in relation to the revitalisation scheme in Spencer Road and Carlisle Road, and I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Tony and all the work that has been done to get these projects to this stage. There's a lot of anticipation, particularly in the businesses in Spencer Road that I've been speaking to, and it's great to see Dungiven Road and Lower Chapel Road incorporated into it, because they've for long times felt that they've missed out on our schemes. But when this revitalisation scheme is building on the success of previous schemes along Clooney Terrace and Spencer Road and other parts of our city centre, but I suppose what sets this scheme apart from the others is that the sheer scale of it, the number of properties that are involved. I suppose it presents a specific challenge to the officers, and I just want to again thank Tony and our partners in the City Centre Initiative for getting the projects to this stage. It's no mean feat, and it will make a very noticeable difference the appearance of Spencer Road and Carlisle Road and the surrounding areas. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank officers and commend them on the work that's been done. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. And on the same item, I have Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. And I follow up on Councillor Jackson's remarks and agree. Much needed scheme and in those particular areas. Having walked about the area over this last while, I've noticed that the standard, shall we say, of buildings and shop fronts along those areas leaves a lot to be desired, and the scheme is a very worthwhile and much needed scheme. However, members will recall that at the last meeting we considered the COVID recovery small settlements programme of 2 million plus that council has been successful in. Included within that there is shopfront revitalisation as well, and I note from the minutes of the last meeting that the director referred to the swift turnaround in terms of awareness of the funding programme, and indeed moving forward based on COVID recovery aspects of timescales. She further advised the next step for the officer team was in relation to detailed scoping of each intervention. And whilst I welcome the shop enhancement that is coming, that is in the report here, is there any update on the shop enhancement type intervention that was to be forthcoming from the COVID recovery small settlements programme? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Members, just to remind members, that the COVID Recovery Small Settlement Scheme is a separate funding scheme from this revitalisation scheme. This scheme has actually been ongoing for a number of years in order to get us to the stage where we are. In terms of the COVID Recovery Small Settlement Schemes, which is relating to our rural villages and towns, we are actively scoping the projects in those areas, which, as Alderman Hussey has mentioned, also include elements of revitalisation and upfront enhancement. We're coming to the end of that scoping, and we intend to have further engagement with members on that in order to go through the proposals. The COVID recovery, as members know, is certainly a much shorter, quicker intervention than perhaps some of the other shopfront enhancement schemes that we've done in the past, and we hope to be able to have delivery in a shorter period of time due to that. So we, as I said, intend to engage with members actively in the coming weeks in order to discuss that in more detail. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, quick response to that. I was a bit concerned when I heard the director referring there to the scheme that on item 14 took a number of years to get to the stage, but I'm perhaps buoyed a wee bit more in that the scheme seems to be the COVID recovery scheme seems to be moving a wee bit quicker in that, which is most welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair. And on the back of everything that has been said, our party would just like to welcome the scheme, and it will enhance the whole area and around Carlisle Road and Spencer Road, and it has to be welcomed. And look, I do take on board Alderman Hussey's issue about the COVID Recovery Small Settlements Programme, and I take on board the comments by our Director, Karen, in relation to that, and look forward to that, you know, when the scoping exercise is done and that engagement with members, and there may be a report coming back on. But Chair, just to welcome the work in Spencer Road and Carlisle Road is worthwhile. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Morris. Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to be put on the record, thanks to Tony and the team in relation to all the work that's been done to get the scheme this far. I know the pandemic interrupted it. It was one of the last events I attended before the pandemic hit, in terms of a public meeting where we had lots of local businesses who came along, who were keen to be involved, and it's great to see that effort hasn't been lost, and fair play to all the officers involved in getting it this far. I suppose, Chair, it occurs to me, looking at the improvements to the shop fronts that are there, existing businesses, that there are also other businesses, other properties along the route that are not being used, that are not trading, that are derelict at the moment, and I'm wondering, is there any scope for improvements, maybe not through this particular pot of money, but in other ways that the council could look at in terms of city dressing up part of the road that would not fall into the scheme, but would also help tackle the you know, some of the derelict sites that are along there. I know that there's been some good progress in terms of some of the sites being taken over by social housing providers, and construction work is underway at some of those locations along Spencer Road. So that type of added life to the location here in the waterside would be appreciated. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Martin. Members, no indicated speakers on that particular item. When we finish these items for information, members, I propose that we'll take a quick 10-minute comfort break. So moving swiftly on to item 17, and Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. And it's just on the climate bill and the report brought back in that. But I think so. That was passed just, I think, at our last A&R meeting, and but since then the latest IPCC report came out there at the start of April, which said a now and never target really for climate action, where it said nothing less than radical action can hope to avert climate disaster. And the IPCC report defined a 2025 deadline for really reversing greenhouse emissions. And I think this actually makes clear to me how inadequate our climate bill is. Although our climate bill is very welcome, given that we're like a decade behind any of our neighbouring governments, but it really is highly inadequate, and it makes me ask a lot of questions of the CCC, given I think what they're saying seems to be very much at odds with the IPCC. And I really think, you know, we do have to be very, very critical of Stormont's climate response so far. Earlier in the meeting there have been discussion about Europe's laws and how they have protected the environment here, but the main thing that has protected the environment here are environmental activists and local communities who are using whatever law and means possible to them, whether it's local or European or global, to actually defend the environment here. And it's only been environmental activists who have been our independent environmental protection agents, given our lack of an independent environmental protection agency and the inadequate safeguards for the environment that all the government departments have done. So I just want to just put that on record that the climate change bill, although very, very welcome, given the latest IPCC report, is highly inadequate. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill, your comments are noted. Item 18 is Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. And members will recall that this was the road defects that was highlighted in NRA reports, neighbourhood renewal areas. Members will recall that I was concerned that there was no coverage of those areas of our district beyond or outside of the neighbourhood renewal areas. And I note that the reply from the department, again, it refers to the neighbourhood renewal areas. Would it be possible that a letter could go and ask for a similar report back on road defects on the rest of our district beyond the neighbourhood renewal areas? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Hussey, I'm reliably informed that that can be actioned, and I'd be happy to second that course of action, and I don't envisage anybody abstaining or being opposed to that.
Appreciate it, Chair.
Okay. Members, as I said, we'll take a 10-minute comfort break, so we'll be back at 6:05, and could I just get a proposer and seconder to one to committee?
I'll do
Proposed
that.
Councillor Tierney,
I'll do
seconded
that.
by Councillor Boyle.
Thank you.
Okay, members, see you back at 6:05. We'll continue on now in the confidential part of the meeting. And item 19 is the matters arising from the confidential minutes of our previous meeting, pages 137 to 142. Any matters arising? No matters arising, so members, we move to item 20, which is the Castledare Greenway Phase 2 budget. And Connor's taking this first.
Thanks, Chair.